First of all, I want to welcome everybody back to poolside edition of Late Night with Locks. Hopefully you guys hear me the same. Hopefully you guys are able to enjoy tonight's show. I want to welcome all of our people back. Before we get started, I can't thank you enough for allowing me to do this show here. However many weeks it's been, it seems like it's been forever. But like I said, we got one more big show after tonight, and then it's time to get the football team ready. So again, we appreciate all the love you guys have shown us throughout the pandemic, and hopefully, like for me it was for you, a way to just kind of get away from a lot of the things that's been going on, and again, get away from the news and really catch up with all things DMV. And tonight's show is another example of that. Before we move on, I want to thank our guests from Tuesday. Got to thank Reese Davis. You know, I think we've had the entire ESPN crew on here this show, during the show. And I love talking to Reese, a guy that has been the epitome of what the college football landscape has been about the last few years with College Game Day. I got to thank Marlon Humphrey, a Baltimore Raven, former player of mine from Alabama, for coming on and spending time with us. We're expecting big things out of our Ravens this year. Marlon had a great year last year, and we expect him to do the same this year, as well as Jedrick Wills Jr., who's getting ready for his rookie season, first-round draft pick of the Cleveland Browns. I appreciate all three of those guys for coming on last Friday. And again, we will always continue to thank our frontline workers for the job that you guys do or have done throughout this pandemic, throughout COVID-19, coronavirus, whatever you want to call it. We can't thank our frontline workers enough for the job that you guys have done throughout. I think I say this all the time, but DC is the most powerful city in the world, and so many powerful things come out of this city, period. We have people making world decisions right here in the DMV. Most of the decisions they make are changing the world for the better. Today I'm going to bring some of the people who've helped put the DMV on the map, from the music side as well as the culinary side. I hate when a beard tells me what to do in the background. She's telling me to slow down, but I'm excited. So again, this show, we've got everything from culinary to music, and these three guys coming on tonight exemplify what the DMV is all about. And we talk sports a lot, but I love music just like I love sports. And I'm a little biased with our first guest because he happens to be my nephew, and I've had an opportunity to see him grow, to see the music that he's put out. A lot of you haven't even heard it. In the background, you heard me playing his latest project, Me, which dropped, I want to say, a month ago. He signed to Motown, again, with the Motown label, just released the single Me, and has a big-time project coming up this summer. And I can't wait for you guys to hear the music. I've been pumping it all summer long.
Yes, sir.
We have Chaz French listening parties over here, right here out in the backyard.
All day.
And it's great to bring on my nephew, Motown signee, Chaz French.
Yes,
You got to check out his projects. He's got 2 or 3 other albums. He's done songs with a lot of big-time people, but you're going to like this next project because I'm just telling you, it is fire. Chazo, what's up, man?
What it do, huh?
Oh, I'm back here late night with Locks. I got a family member on, your grandmom and your aunties. They paid me a lot of money to get you on this show because you know it's really hard to make late night with Locks.
How much
What's going on, man?
Some of that.
I noticed, and you've been over here a couple times during the pandemic, but
Yes,
I
sir.
noticed that you've been putting out a lot of little fire, little snippets of things on out on your social media, as in you've been gone for about 1.5 to 2 years, haven't done anything. But
Yes,
I
sir.
personally know you got a catalog full of fire. Talk
Yes,
a little
sir.
bit about what you've been doing during the pandemic and what you've been doing the last couple of years, man, because
Man.
the people in the DMV love you. Got a loyal following. That's why they jump on here tonight. But talk a little bit about what you got going on, man.
I just been working, trying to write, trying to read more, just writing and trying to record as much as I can through it. You know, I can't stop. The grind don't stop for nobody.
Well, you know, for you, now, you grew up in the church, and like I said, you were the first grandchild. I know that
Right.
you and Miko were really, really close.
Super
What is
close.
it like for a musician to be quarantined? Like, is this a great time for you as a musician to be able to feel your inner emotions and write? Is it a time where you lock yourself in the studio, which I know you spend a ton of time in the studio because every
Yeah.
time you make something, you send it to me for my approval. But what is it like
I
for an
got
artist like you, man, during the pandemic, during the quarantine?
Mm-hmm.
What type of vibe do you get from going through something like
It's
this?
just, for me, I know it just forces me to like dig as deep as possible. It's just as far as like looking for the inspiration and staying inspired. Like, it's a tough time, but you gotta get it done. And I know I dig back into past situations. I only make music from experience, so I just try to keep it going as much as I can.
Right. Now, you've been signed with the Motown label for a minute,
Yeah.
and you put out, what, 3 or 4? How many different projects have you put out? And talk a little bit about your latest project that I don't know what the date is, but I know you got a couple things coming out here on your birthday coming up, May 29th.
Yeah,
Chaz,
Friday.
this Friday. Talk a little bit about the current project and some of the past projects and what the inspirations were behind them. And I know the project that you got coming out because I've heard it, man. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna just tell you, it is a great project. Talk a little bit about what it's been like signed to the Motown label, the history behind Motown, all the great acts that they've signed. What it's been like to be a member of Motown and some of the past projects you've done.
It's a dream come true. It's like somebody always saying they want to go to the NBA and finally getting drafted.
All right, I'm in uncle mode. Hold up. You got to lift your camera up a little bit so we can see your head. That's all right. Uncle, there you go. Now we can see you.
Like I said, it's like somebody always saying they want to go to the league and getting drafted. Like, it's a dream come true to be signed. Like, that's what I always wanted growing up. And to finally be able to make it happen, it was just like I told you so moment for me. So working with Motown it's been like working with family, and I'm excited to see where it's going to take me.
Right. Now, you grew up in a family full of athletes. And
yeah.
I know for a fact, because you spent time, you lived with us in Champaign, Illinois for a short time. And I know for a fact that with all the athletic cousins and, how were you able to, and you grew up in the church first, that's where your first musical background came from, your mom, Crystal, a pastor and really strong faith-based woman, single parent for the most part. What was it like fighting for, all your cousins and everybody else are great athletes, and here you are grinding on poetry and music, and talk a little bit about that experience.
It made me go harder. I know Aunt Kia used to push me to go harder. Like, she used to do poetry night for me. So, like, it made me go, like, shout out to you guys for always pushing me to the next level. Like, I felt like I used to look at it as competing with my cousins and athletes, but then it was just like, we all trying to get to the same place. We all trying to get to the top. We all trying to make it to be able to take care of our family. So it went from competition to inspiration.
Right.
For me.
Now, you've had a chance to work with some great artists. I love asking these type of questions. Yeah. Who's been your favorite artist to collab with, number one? And then I know, I'll let you answer that first. Who's your favorite artist that you've collabed with? I know you've done stuff with Glizzy. I know you've done stuff with just a ton of people, not just the DMV folks. You did the score for the Spider-Man movie. You did the soundtrack for the Spider-Man animated movie. Yeah. What's been your favorite collab?
I got a couple collabs I can't even really mention right now, but I love working with Ade and Internet James. They from they're from the area too. Working with them is just so easy. It's just it's super simple. We fill each other out, and then it's always history. It's always good. It's always fire when we work.
Well, I know this is a time of the year where for musicians and even us in the athletic world, man, we are just pent up, waiting for the opportunity to get back. I know in your arena, just like in mine, your ability to perform, which I think is your strongest suit, along with your lyrical skills. But with the pandemic and not being able to have your fans and do shows, what are some other avenues and ways that you're looking to try to still get your music out? Because I know, let's talk a little bit about your project you got coming.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say too much yet, but I know we got music dropping in about a week or so, and we're gonna keep dropping singles for like until we get through it, man. And hopefully we can get this album out by fall.
Right. Well, I know this, man. I've had a chance to hear it, and I'm gonna keep saying it. If you don't know Chaz French yet, and I know if you got Turk fans on here, we got DMV fans on here, we got my man Citizen Coke coming on here in the session. We've got some really talented guys in this area, man, Again, I'm a
Yep.
little biased because he happens to be my nephew, man. But before I let you go, make sure talk a little bit about. You can't talk about the project, but
Yeah.
some of the inspiration behind the project
Yeah.
and the upcoming album.
I know for me, like I had to just for this next album, I had to just get back to making music for me, and like opposed to like trying to compete with the sounds that are out now or try to stay up to date to everything. Like I got back to making music to where it's like when I was making music when nobody was listening to it. You know, like I felt like that was the best music I was making. So I just got back to making the music that made me happy.
Now, you have the ability to sing in Chaz, because I know that you grew up singing, not
Yeah.
rapping.
I can sing a little bit. I can hold a little note.
Then you got the rapping Chaz, who just has the ability to have words come to life. And I love, I'm a lyricist. I like hearing
Facts.
stories and words, and we talk about this all the time.
Facts.
And then you have obviously what you got to put out what sells, and how do you go about making a decision on the direction, or do you give them all of it?
You just do. I just think you do what makes you happy. You do whatever you're good at, and eventually it'll pay off. Like I mean, a hit these days can be anything. You know, like music is consumed so fast, so you just got to stay consistent and be the best you possible, and eventually the world will see it.
No doubt. You've heard it live from Chaz French, DMV's finest.
Yes, sir.
I'm biased, but you know what? It's all right, because I know the work is fire. And I can't wait for him to be able to drop the next one. If you haven't downloaded Me by Chaz French, it's a summer jam, it's a swimming pool jam, a family reunion jam. I know we aren't allowed social distancing wise to be able to have pool parties and all that, but download Me on Motown on all the platforms, Spotify, iTunes. Make sure you guys check it out and stay tuned for the new project. I want to thank Chaz French, Motown's finest, for coming on and spending a little bit of time with Late Night with Locks, Poolside Edition on a Tuesday. Chaz, appreciate you, man. I'll see you Friday for your birthday.
Thank you. Yes, sir. We lit.
Chaz French, man. Thanks, Chaz French, for coming on. Really, really, really pumped up about this project of his, man. And if you haven't heard his music, he's got probably 3 or 4 projects out on all of the platforms. Download Chaz French. Real strong vocal, real strong rapper, and represents, like I always talk about, the DNA of the DMV. Got a great story to tell. Really excited for him. As we continue to move on, this next guy is the guy that I'm sure needs no introduction. Has been a dear, dear friend. We grew up together. I've known Kopi since he was probably 11, 12, 13-year-olds. Most people don't believe it, but the guy's a DCIAA, formerly the Inter High League guy, played baseball in high school for the Woodrow Wilson Tigers, uptown guy. He started out as a DJ, became a soulful singer who kind of sets the tone with his guitar and his arrangements. As I've told this guy, I can't put his music in a genre because I hear flavors of go-go, I hear pop, I hear hip-hop. I mean, it's really, really hard for me to put his music into any genre. He has 7 albums out, has been all over IG Live. He's kind of changing the game for artists and how they can get their music out as we work through the pandemic. But a great, great friend of mine, might as well call him family. We spent a lot of time together growing up, as well as in our adult lives. Let's bring on Clarence Greenwood, a.k.a. Citizen Cope. Cope, hey, what's up, Cope?
What's up, man? How are you?
Late Night with Locks Poolside, just for you.
I
know you're out in LA. You're out in that LA Venice Beach area enjoying the great weather. We had great weather today, so we decided to bring it outside. What's been going on with you, man, during the pandemic?
I love the poolside. You know, I think it's just one of those times that we all have to dig deep and learn that we have to innovate and do things differently, because this is going to be something that I think everyone's going to want to be kind of hitting the ground running when they get there, when all this stuff lets up. So I had to really look deeply into what I was doing and do some innovation, which was started out. I started my own VIP company prior to this, and was ticketing a lot of VIP events. And was going to start doing it for other artists. And then I started to do the Instagram lives and the Facebook lives. And there was a lot of glitches, and didn't have professional audio, professional video. So I incorporated that and started ticketing my own shows. And probably one of the first artists, Erykah Badu, did it, but on a smaller like ticket price. I kind of brought it to a higher ticket price and a production value, because my audience is a lot more niche than Erykah's, where she can reach hundreds of thousands of people with that. So I kind of turned it into a real intimate acoustic kind of performance. And you know, artistically, I was feeling this is like something that was really, you know, there was some really great moments in every different, you know, avenue that I tried. Every night had some different moments, almost like a live show. And so I got kind of used to not hearing the crowd, and then it just turned it into singing a song like I'm just singing in my, like writing a song in my room, woodshedding, and letting people in on that completely unique experience. Yeah. So that was pretty much, and it's really taken off. We're gonna start doing some other artists. We got Alice Smith doing 5 shows, and we got Winona Judd, legendary country artist, doing something later this week on Thursday. And then we got a couple other big artists jumping on, and kind of really showing that the artist kind of taking away the division between the artist and you know, any kind of middleman type situation. And you know, there's a couple other companies that I think got started doing the same thing, and I think they were, you know, they're really good people, and it's great to kind of like go out here and do some things that haven't been done. So it's like an innovating time, and it's a new paradigm, and it's like I think artists have gotten so caught up in having to be dependent on so many different avenues that maybe this is finally the avenue where artists can take a hold of their career and financially start to take care of themselves.
That's the DMV hustling you, man. I've had a chance, as you know, times like this force you to adjust, change, and find new lanes and new ways to reach your audience. For me, it's recruiting. For you, it's music and your fans. And I've had a chance to watch your virtual shows and just how from the time this thing started, when you started doing them, just kind of to bring people in to now professionally based productions behind it. And I mean, you know, I'm gonna have to get used to possibly playing football without fans. So for you to be able to make the change really quickly, to make the adjustment, catch the wave, and I know you've done some really great things in the last month and a half with your new company, and now have turned this thing into basically cutting out the middleman from you and your fans. And I think that's something that it's like the new norm. We like to talk about the new norm, and for you guys as artists, it's ways to still take care of your family, but while still being able to reach your fans, right?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, in what we both do, the fans or the people, the audience, whatever you want to call them, there's all, you know, in sports events, that's part of the event. You know, you're getting hyped up because there's 80,000 people. The people are getting even more hyped up when there's a great play. You know, just like when I play a song, somebody wants to hear a moment, and I think every performance is unique, and there's always going to be something. It's like one of the things that before you went to down to Alabama, and you had the guys play the game, like, you know, playing in a backyard. I love that conversation, because like at some point people have to, you know, as an artist, like perform something like they're playing it, and it's you have to cut out all these other things that have and go back to the act, you know, learn all the
natural essence of it.
Yeah,
essence, like,
yeah.
I mean, that's exactly. I mean, when, you know, that was one of the things, I think I told you this, that I learned from the first time I got to be a head coach to the next opportunity I was given, was that it's a game, man, and it's a game these guys got to enjoy the opportunities and play it like in the essence of the game as when you were a child. And it didn't matter if you had fans. It didn't matter the scoreboard, as long as you were competing. And I mean, to me, that's kind of what the technology of the what you just kind of brought to light in terms of being able to do shows. You're doing it from the bare essence of like when you put together and arrange a song. So
Yeah.
it's great. It's great to see that.
It's like me sitting in a room singing a song, and that's like trying to adapt to that. Well, I'm not having to vocalize over, in front of a PA and thousands of people or whatever. It's like, and I'm not seeing the argument going on here or somebody screaming something in the front row. It's like you're really, really present in the moment. And I think that's one adjustment that athletes will have to get, but I think they'll be able to, wow, I'm just playing game again. I'm playing it like it's on the street. And obviously with a lot more, there's all these expectations that the athletes have, but at the end of the day, if they can really get deep and enjoy that game, then we might be in store for some really amazing football.
No doubt, especially some of the behind the scenes things you normally can't and don't get to hear. Now, that's
Right.
a great segue into sports because I know you were a baseball player for those Woodrow Wilson Tigers, the Fighting Tigers, uptown that happened to always lose to Ballou High School. That's what happened. That's what y'all get for not allowing me to go to my school that everyone else in my family went to but me. I had to go to Ballou. I got to go to Ballou, which to me was awesome because we never lost to Woodrow Wilson in football during my time at Ballou. But talk a little bit about, man, what it was like growing up in the city. You grew up during the same era I grew up on with sports, and I know how much sports have impacted your life, man. Talk a little bit about what it was like growing up in the city and going to Wilson and just, your background.
Well, I think it was definitely a different time. I think the inner high was probably, obviously very underfunded as far as the sports and the arts. And but then again, there was like growing up, you could get an instrument. I don't even know if they have that available now, and you could take it home and try to learn your instrument. And the sports, the fields were always messed up, and they didn't have enough uniforms, and so you had that deep challenge of what was going on and what was popular and this kind of thing. It was always a challenge to play and to watch that we didn't have the same excitement because I spent part of the time in Texas and West Texas, which had a huge
football
and small town kind of thing, and you would go back up and see like the Wilson Field would be like mostly dirt, and then you would go to HD
3:00 p.m. games because you couldn't play at night.
And so you had and I've loved to watch what the progress is done, and like you were probably really one of the first people to start grabbing guys out of DC and realizing that there was a lot of talent there because they weren't getting the attention. And there were always great athletes. I remember it was in basketball and in even in some in baseball. We had some Dominican guys that played with us that were just, definitely next level. And you finding these players and putting them up to where it is now, which is one of the biggest kind of per capita. I think DC has some of the most professional football players in the nation, which is amazing because like back in the day, I think we had like a couple guys that would get big scholarships, and that was a rarity.
Yeah, they would come out of most of the private schools, but no, you're exactly right, man. There's been this resurgence, and I don't think that there weren't great players back then. They didn't have the platform that our kids now growing up in this area, whether it's sports or whether it's music like you, to have that platform. And, I started recruiting this area because I haven't had a chance to recruit and coach at a high level. And I think of some of the players that I've seen at places like Maryland and Alabama and Florida that I've coached, And I think back to some of the high school players that I played against in this area. There's no doubt in my mind we had Division I players
Right.
all over the Anaheim, but we didn't have the platform. I will tell you, it was a personal, and you know this, it was a personal vendetta for me to make sure that when I got the job in Maryland in 1997, that we would recruit the top players in this area. I remember talking to Ron Vanderlyn and specifically about this, saying, look, there's too many great players in this DC, Baltimore, PG County region. We need to make sure we recruit these guys before we go worrying about, no offense to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Florida. And that's kind of what the foundation of the Renaissance years of Maryland from 01 to 03 when Ralph Friedgen came in and won with those teams had great players from this area. So you're exactly right. Now, and people don't notice, but this dude is a huge recruit, Nick. Like, he loves following recruiting to the point where he texts me, oh, what about this kid and what about that kid? I'm like, man, how do you have time to follow recruiting? Where did your love for recruiting come from? Because I'm going to tell you, you send me names and it's at weird times at night because obviously you're on different coasts sometimes, and I know you were constantly touring. Where do you find the time and where did you get the love from just following recruiting?
Well, like I said prior, I was all into that, and when I got into the music thing, it's just like full on. Everything about my life, was that either writing or trying to get my music out. And then when it started to happen, it was to build it, touring. And then I got asked a question, is like, well, do you have any hobbies outside of music? And the answer was like, unfortunately, was no. I'm thinking to myself, God, like, why, how did I become so unbalanced? And I'm in the back of the tour bus, probably a week after this interview, and I turn on ESPN, and they were playing, Stephon Diggs' high school team was playing this big national game against a team from Ohio. And I started to watch it, and they were talking about how the other team had 50 guys on the sideline, and they only brought what was the school again?
Good Counsel.
Good Counsel. Good Counsel always only brought a couple, like 25 or 30 players, and I saw this guy intercept the pass and run it back for a touchdown and go all over the field, and his vision, I was just like, man, this guy is freaking amazing. So I checked out his tape, and then right next to his tape on YouTube was Tavon Austin's tape. Right. And I watched Tavon Austin's tape, and he was at Dunbar, Baltimore. And I'd never seen a running back do what Tavon had done in this tape. And I found out he was at West Virginia playing wide receiver, and I started watching the West Virginia games, and ESPN Texas had called me and asked who was going to win, Texas or West Virginia, and they all got on, and I said, Texas is going to get blown away. And they were all like, who's this? Da, da, da. Texas defense doesn't lose by 50 in Austin. And Tavon just went off on him. And so it pretty much, I got to thank Stephon Diggs for getting me out of my my one-dimensional hole. And I really, just kept following those guys and then checking out what other, what else was happening. And back to the music and DC thing where the athletes were having a hard time. When I first got signed to Capitol Records out of DC, there was nobody getting signed to major labels out of the DC area. And it was kind of the similar thing. We'd had people, do big records of the past. Some of the bands that were out of the punk rock era kind of had jumped up to that level, but they'd moved to New York since then. And there were a couple groups in the indie rock kind of realm that were doing their thing. But as far as my music was so eclectic, like you were saying, you couldn't put a category on it, that it was a difficult time. When I got signed, it was something that I had to kind of forge my own identity and kind of build my fans one by one, and without radio play, without major publications, and in that realm, it's difficult because if you sign to a major label, the bottom line is they're signing you to make a lot of money. They're not signing you to sell 100,000 records. They're signing you to sell millions. 100,000 probably be good for first record, but they sign, every label signs 40 or 50 at the time, sometimes 60 and 70 groups, because they were just trying to show that something would work, and they were all being bought out by major corporations, so they wanted to see what the monthly or the quarterly income was. So if they got one out of those 8 groups that were new to sell a lot of records, they could show some stuff. And I got dropped by the first label. Second time around, I had to come back and write a whole bunch of new songs. Then got kind of a bidding war going, put out that record. That record kind of flopped at the time and was really, I had a couple guaranteed record on my record. So, but the marketing promotion wasn't there. And, Carlos Santana heard a song that I did and wanted to put it on his record. That record went #1 in multi countries and ended up going to his label, Arista at the time, which was a big pop label, and they were really like full on cope. And then the whole staff got fired, and I had to change again. So I mean, there's always going to be challenges, but I always look back and say, out of all those challenges, look at all these great things that happened. And at the time, I was like, oh man, just stuck on the fact that what if this would have happened, and what if they would have taken this on the radio, songs that now are gold that they didn't pay any attention to. And at the end of the day, it's like, you got to look at the challenges and the bad things that happen, and you say, well, and that even comes from a personal level of being raised, how I was raised, and certain things. You're like, okay, well, that was actually good for my survival, and it's difficult to think of that at the time when that happens, but it's all part of the puzzle.
You segued into something that I thought is a very unique story. You talk about the impact of Carlos Santana and the song that you made the song. He wanted it. It made it to his record. I know it's been on a lot of different things, but your last project you called Heroin and Helicopters, and
right.
Irony of it, and I can remember, I don't know if you remember me texting you like, man, why are you calling this thing Heroin and Helicopters?
Right.
Talk a little bit about the story behind your latest project, Heroin and Helicopters, and what was the reason for you naming it that?
Well, the first time I met Carlos Santana, he came to show it at the Fillmore in San Francisco, where he lives. I was doing a show there, and he came backstage and he said, right at the introduction, he says, whatever you do, stay away from the 2 H's. And I'm like, what are the 2 H's? And he says, heroin and helicopters. Don't use heroin and don't get on helicopters. And obviously the heroin reason is obvious,
right.
But the helicopters, he'd lost some close friends, and Stevie Ray Vaughan and Bill Graham, the legendary promoter for the Grateful Dead and all that out of San Francisco, had perished in a helicopter accident. And I just, years later, this is 15, 16 years later, I was thinking the name of the album, and I felt like the correlation to, after every show, there's somebody coming and saying their child had, or their brother, or them themselves had, overdosed, and I was like, what's all this new heroin stuff going on? Because I thought that was something in the 70s.
Right.
So I'm like learning from my fans that this epidemic is going on and that it's really touching people. People are losing their lives. And then I saw peers of mine in the music industry start to, even if I didn't know them, but people I would respect, or even people just starting out, young kids, overdosing, some dying, but friends and family members, struggling with personal, like substance abuse problems that were either heroin or derivative of heroin with the pills, right. Derivative of that, and then they would go back to using that. And then also just kind of like the notation of addiction itself, not just to substances, but to our cell phones, to our social media, to conflict. It seems so easy to have conflict. People say cruel things, whether we, know them or not, over the internet. And if you know somebody and you want to say something hard, sometimes it's easier to text somebody. And I thought was beautiful about one of the things you were talking about. Sometimes it's really hard to say something that's difficult that you care about. How do you
Moral
say
courage.
something?
Right.
Yeah, moral courage. How do you say something that's hard for somebody to hear to them? And I think a lot of times that doesn't include empathy anymore. It can easily just be something rude and short. And I think that we've had that. And the helicopters part was basically, the analogy of trying to get somewhere really fast. And I think our society wants to get somewhere really fast without enjoying the journey, because they're looking at, oh, if I just get the money, everything's going to happen. And I've gotten the big check before, and that lasts. You're excited about that for a minute, but that's really not what drove you, because at the end of the day, something deeper was driving you to prove something else besides, and it's easy to say, oh, money doesn't know, it helps. But that's, if you're really into something that you're doing, it's not just about that check, and it's not just about that destination. If we have to realize that our destination is where we are, and we have to enjoy that moment and start to learn to really kind of stay present and stay still in that. And you can learn so many life lessons by doing that.
Great advice from a dear friend, man. It's always great catching up with you. I know you're doing some stuff on the internet yourself, on Instagram. You've got Cooking with Cope. You've got Cooling with Cope. I'm looking forward to coming on. I know you got Lola doing stuff in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Need to stay on. We got one more segment for this show, man. We've got a former player who you know really, really well, Ricardo Young, who's turned into a great entrepreneur, opening up a project here in the D.C. area called Victory, Maryland. He's already opened up a couple of establishments with Tobias DeRozan, one of the top chefs in the country, who's also former football player from the DMV area. So you got to check it out. And if you're ever in Miami, stop by Ricardo and Tobias's place, man, Victory, Miami. From what I hear, I haven't been there yet. Let's see all the stuff on the internet. It looks really good. But I know you know Ricardo, former player of mine. And you got to check out this next segment, man. But
everybody knows Ricardo. Once they meet him, that he was bound for a great destiny. When and football was just one of the things that got him there. So we're happy for him.
Well, we didn't get to talk about how you didn't make the Unlocked series, how you made the on the reel, the uncut reel. I know we put out a small smidgen of the episodes you were supposed to make. You've been cut from some $100 million movies.
Yeah.
You also got cut by the Unlocked series, and I apologize on behalf of the Terps, man. We thank you so much for your time, man. I'm looking forward to catching up with you.
My bedroom scene got cut out of the Battleship movie. And now I'm like thrown down to getting kicked out, cut on the floor by the Locks documentary. And so I really have some talking to do to the producers over there. So not going to be all. Tell them it's not going to be all smiles when I see them. Well,
I know you're gonna make it out for at least one game, man. Look forward to catching up with you. Tell the family I said hello, and let's catch up soon.
All right, I love you, man.
Love you too, bro.
All right, take care.
Clarence Greenwood, aka Citizen Coach. It's always great to catch up with friends and family, and that's what this show's been about. Welcome back to part 2 of Late Night with Locks, here from the pool, as we're again looking forward to pulling up a couple of more of our guests. Former Maryland Terrapin football player, Terp graduate, received his master's degree here from Maryland. He took Miami by storm with his Victory Miami concept, him and Tobias DeRozan. Ricardo grew up in the uptown section here. Like I said, a former Terp, a former Hokie, spent a minute in New Mexico. And then he, again, has taken the business side and the network that he gained his relationships here in the DMV. Another great example of what the Terrapin degree is all about, because it's not just about football success, but here's a guy that played football here that's having great success in the business world. Like I said, I've known this guy since he was in ninth grade, and there's no doubt in my mind, if you ever met him, that he would be one of those guys that would have great success in the business world. We're going to bring a former Terp, DMV native, Ricardo Young. Ricardo Young. Former quarterback. What's up, Ricardo? Look at you, man. Where are you at? Are you in DC? You in LA? You in Miami? Where you at?
I'm in Miami. We actually gonna reopen on Thursday, so I'm here. We had training today with some of the staff, and I had some consultants come in and do some work for me. So, just here. I'm still here, as you can see. I'm here, just getting everything.
You're international. I mean, I look up on your Instagram, as you know, even from being a player, how I stalk my players' Instagrams and social media to make sure that they are doing smart things with their social media. They ain't putting up a bunch of, you get those late night texts from Locks, or have, and you still do, where I say, man, what you doing? Pull that down. Talk a little bit about, man, and I know you're excited about your project up here, but let's talk about what went into Victory Miami and the concept, because I know from a bunch of the players that I've had a chance to coach that were down there for the Super Bowl in Miami, that it was a hit. What went into the thought behind it and the concept, and talk a little bit about you and Tobias's relationship and how this thing came to fruition.
So Tobias actually, we had, generalized, talked about it in maybe November. He came down in December. We was talking about opening one in DC.
Right.
So the first one was supposed to be in DC or Maryland. We talked about that briefly, and he came down here. He cooked for me a lot, so he was cooking for me and my guests and things like that I had over. And it was a restaurant here that wanted me to buy into their restaurant at the time. And I took him through there and was like, what you think about this restaurant, et cetera, et cetera. And it was just like, I was like, man, we can do a lot with this space if I could get them to, give us the space or whatever. So we sat down and talked to them, and I just was like, man, if I can bring him in or whatever the case may be, like, I know with his food and my flavor, it would go together and it would be perfect. And I'm talking about, it turned around really fast. Like, he had the concept already down as far as in food with the menu he wanted to run with. And just so happened the Super Bowl was just coming up. So, I was like, I'm going to just go and get this thing decorated the way I want it, put the booths up how I want it. And, February 1st came like that, and we was off the running. I don't know if we expected Miami to do that well that fast, but it went crazy really fast. So that first month in February was crazy. We closed, and then we reopened up on Valentine's Day, and that was phenomenal since then. And then we ran into this, but yeah, we ready to rock and roll. So
well, you talk a lot about Tobias, and I know he's not on here, man, but just celebrity chef, was a repeat champ on the Food Network's Guy Grocery Games, was born in DC, a football player, man. Talk a little bit about the celebrity chef status of, you add a celebrity chef like Tobias with a guy like you, who I equate you to what I am in the recruiting game. That's you in the marketing, the club scene, the mark business. Anybody that has ever met you, and like I said, I've known you since ninth grade. I can remember you as a 16-year-old driving a hoopty out to Illinois to come to a camp by yourself to earn a scholarship. Was a big-time player in the D.C. area, well respected, but you've always also carried yourself in a way. Talk a little bit about the relationship with Tobias and how the two different concepts of you and your marketing side and him and his food side, and what the expectation can be for Victory Maryland, because I'm looking forward to seeing what Victory Maryland is all about. And I saw on your Instagram, which is why I decided to have you guys on here. You guys are really blowing up with that concept coming here to the DC area now.
Yeah, so me, Locks. I'm like big on, city love. Like, reason why I followed you, the reason why I came back home to Maryland to play for Maryland. Like, I'm big on, city love, and if somebody out of the city makes it, being able to, be able to partner with somebody from back, that was a former football player, things of that nature. Like, it's always like a great thing for me to be able to, share my vision with somebody like him who went to school in Sicily, and things like that. He has all the finest culinary, statues you can, think of. So, my biggest thing was, I was good at, I'm big on, doing what you're good at, so like I'm really good at the marketing, the
Relationships.
the relationships, the scene, the people, that thing, like the business management side of things, and being able to run like the front of the house and the numbers, and he's really good in the kitchen. He's really good with the staff and the line cooks and expo and things like that. So I try to stay out of those things, and he try to stay out of the front of the house. So it gels perfectly together because I'm good at what I do, and I do what I do, and he's good at what he do, and it bonds perfectly well. And just a former football player, it was I mean like all the guys, like even guys from Maryland that went to school with us, as far as in like Nigel, Will, all those guys, like relationship wise, like always just trying to reach back and give people opportunity. And I just was in a fortunate position to be able to financially be able to put certain things together to make, certain dreams be reality, so, and that was a dream of his. He already had the victory concept. I put a little spice on that with the hookah and, because like I knew what down here was missing, because I've been down here for a few years, and I knew there was no hookah place to go to here. It was no, vibe scenery down here where it's like outside of the club scene,
Right.
Especially like with good food. Everybody come down and say, "Oh, the food not good," or it's nowhere to eat. It's nowhere to really just chill and vibe before we go out or before we go on the yacht or things like that. And I think, when I found him, it was like, oh, I can create the perfect scenery now. Like I know exactly what to do and how to implement it, and it's worked well.
Talk a little bit about your, former football player here. You spent the season here at Maryland. After sitting out, you sat out the spring and played your last year here, and you earned a degree. You got 2 degrees, one from obviously Virginia Tech, right? And then you got a degree from here at Maryland. What degree did you leave from Maryland with? And talk a little bit. I know I haven't spoke to you as I put together some research for you coming on tonight. You ran into, because of your Maryland network and degree, you ran into some people on the business side with your Victory Maryland thing. Talk a little bit about the impact of being able to come back home and play at Maryland, some of the networking opportunities that have opened up for you, and how they've played a major role in this Victory Maryland project that you and Tobias have coming.
So the degrees I have from Maryland is finance and family science. So me coming back home was like absolutely great for me. I mean, football wise, it didn't go the way that I had seen it going,
Right.
but just from a standpoint of like you said, like relationships, I always think, futuristic when I'm thinking about, as far as in the next steps to take in life or whatever the case may be. I know we talked about coaching, once upon a time when I was still there on the team or whatever. But in my relationship with you and Tavon and having all those relationships and ties with people back home, I met Chad and I took the agent route because that was Tavon's agent. Right. So Chad took a liking to me because of my relationships with all the players and the people in the area, and being able to get guys to stay here, and being able to just get guys to commit to something different, outside of the norm. So I took that agent route, and I was with Chad for maybe 6 years. I think I was with Chad for about 6 years, five or 6 years.
Big Sports, Chad Wiesling, former Turk, turned agent who represents quite a few successful players. Ricardo was an assistant there with SIG. So just to give some background too, when you say
I was player personnel director over there with Chad, and we did a lot of great things. Signed a lot of good players, and we had a lot of success. I just kind of branched off and started having my own personal success because I have other businesses as well, like a smoke shop and having a smoothie shop and with the restaurants now. And, now I have 12 properties that I own in DC on the real estate development side, and a lot of land that I own in DC, and, all of those things. So I was already kind of like serial entrepreneur once I was still doing the football thing. And, we parted ways because I had a lot going on, obviously. And I was doing a lot better personally for myself on a business level, being my own entrepreneur, and that's something later on down the line I see myself doing as well, like start my own sports agency, you know, football, basketball, that sort of thing. So, I mean, the impact of staying home was amazing for me. I mean, obviously, I wish it was a situation like it is now. You was the head coach then. When I was there, things would have been, a lot different. But that wasn't the case. But just the relationships and being home and, you know, being able to be close to those people and the impact that going to the University of Maryland had for me. Everywhere I go, it's recognized everywhere. Like, oh, you went to the University of Maryland, you played quarterback there, et cetera, et cetera. So even still, the leasing management company for where Victory Maryland is, the N.A. Michaels, their owners, and they went to the University of Maryland. So, when I was doing the paperwork to get that place, we had conversations about Maryland and about, the Vassos and, all the Maryland attachments. And they just was so happy to give me the space just because I went to Maryland. Like, oh, you went to Maryland, I went to Maryland. We both alumni. It was like, it was a good thing. And it's just Maryland has helped me propel in a lot of different ways with relationships, especially around the area.
We talk a lot about, I know I do, building your resume with and without the football. And here's another great example of a former Maryland football player. Didn't have to play in the NFL to find great success in other avenues. And there's been another really successful entrepreneur to come out of the Maryland football program, and he started a brand. So the same hustler mentality, skill set, it shows in the way, in everything you've done, man. And I know we're excited about Victory Maryland coming here. If you guys haven't, please go check out Victory Miami's, the menu. I think they've got the menu for Victory Maryland already set. It's going to be up there. Talk a little bit about where the location is going to be before I let you go, let you get your plug in for Victory Maryland.
Victory Maryland is like headed towards Woodmore area, like the Bowish area off of Martin Luther King Jr. Highway. So it's fairly close to the city, and it's in Maryland as well. So it's.
When do you expect it to be open? What's the target date?
I'm shooting for July the 1st, man. I don't really like to really play no games. When I get into something, I'm trying to be in it, and and that's really one of the reasons why me and Tobias always, had a great relationship, because it was like, no matter if it's his brand, my brand, like I'm gonna push. If it's his brand, I'm pushing it like it's my brand, like, and I'm going to get it 10 times just as much as he's going to get it, and all that energy and all of that just helps. Make
DMV fans that follow this show, as again, we talk about this as all things DMV, all things Maryland, all things Coach Locks. Relationship-wise, I've known this guy since, like I said, 9th grade. There has been no doubt in my mind that he would find great success with or without the football. Another great example of the power of the Maryland brand, the Maryland degree. Check out Victory Maryland, hopefully July 1. Get out there, right there, Martin Luther King Jr. Highway, off of the Beltway. Go out and check out Ricardo Young, Tobias DeRozin's newest project, Victory Maryland. I'm sure it'll be a hit, and I'm looking forward to getting, because Tobias said that y'all would deliver. Y'all would deliver out here to where I am.
I heard you said you like that mumbo sauce. I mean, we're gonna have that on the menu. Chicken wings, mumbo sauce things.
You can't be a DMV native if you don't like mumbo. I want to thank Ricardo Young, and again, I know Tobias is out there as well, and Tobias DeRozan.
He's here. I think he's waiting for you to chime him in. So
okay, he wants to come in. I'll bring Tobias in here before we end it. So thanks, Ricardo. We'll bring Tobias on for a second and let him talk a little bit about his background and Victory Maryland. Appreciate you, Ricardo.
Thanks for having me.
And this is going to be a 2-hour show. Late Night with Locks, and then we really gonna have late night. It's really gonna be late night around here. If Tobias is still on, let's see if he's still on here. Ricardo may have taken up all his time. We pull up Tobias. Let's go back to our questions as we wait for my trusty assistant to find Tobias on here and bring him on to Late Night with Locks. I don't know if he's still here, so if not, let me go to some questions. Here's a question. It says, growing up in D.C., what would your typical Friday look like? Man, that's a tough question because it all depends on the time of the year. Because obviously, if it was during football season, you guys all know that we played our games in this area either on Friday afternoons or Saturday morning. So if it was a Saturday morning game, it entailed getting home from practice. My mom would be in the living room having her Marvin Gaye and some of her, the 70s hits going. And so I would be back there getting my mind right for the football game on Saturday morning, which we had to do in the D.C. area because a lot of our schools didn't have lights. Now, if it wasn't football season, obviously we would hit the go-go's. We would, whether it was Cherries or Howard Theater back in the day, Petworth, Rare Essence, Experience Unlimited, Chuck Brown, RSVP, all the different spots was Friday, Saturday nights. So growing up in the city, there was always a million things to do. We either walked or we took the subway everywhere. So to me, I love the city life. I love being here. And as I like to call it, the most powerful city in the world. Don't know. We're going to have Tobias come on here in just a second. I wanted you guys to meet the other half of Victory Miami and Victory Maryland, the backside of it, the restaurant side. And this guy, again, a football player turned culinary expert and has done some really big things. It says here to make sure I give out some shout outs, man. My Champions Club, I know we oftentimes have some of our football supporters that come and support Late Night with Locks. The Champions Club is what it's called. I want to thank those people in the Champions Club for all of the, not just the monetary investments, but the time that you guys give our program. We've got a mentor program that has really, really helped us from a recruiting standpoint, where each of our players are mentored and partnered up. And right now we've gotten 40 off the ground. And the goal is for every player in our football program to have a mentor, serve as a off the field, outside of football type of relationship where our players are able to utilize the network that they gain from being in what a great location that we have to offer here. So I want to thank the mentors that help support our football program. And again, it's been a great, great deal for a lot of our players to have somebody off the field, because we oftentimes talk about building their brand both on and off the field. And anytime you're able to have the most powerful business leaders and community leaders in the DMV area serve as mentors to our team, it's a win-win for our program. So again, our Champions Club and our mentors in our program, I want to thank both those two groups, as well as all of our Terrapin Club members that donate time and money to all things Maryland athletics. So, look, we've tried to get Tobias on here. I don't know if we're able to get it done yet. We're gonna give it one more minute to see if he comes on, because I do want, again, the backside of the victory team does a tremendous job in the kitchen, and I'm looking forward to maybe, again, like I said, the relationship with them having it coming here to the DMV area of maybe utilizing those guys. And again, all things DMV. It's all about supporting our DMV area, whether they're former players, restaurants, the musicians you had tonight, my nephew Chaz French, and as well as Citizen Cope, Clarence Greenwood. I want to thank both those guys. I want to thank Ricardo Young, as well as Tobias DeRozan, who, for whatever reason, we couldn't get him on, but maybe we'll bring him on Friday. I just want to, again, thank you guys for hanging in there with me a little longer show than we normally would have, but we got to hear from outside of the football part of it and the athletic part of it, we got to hear from a couple of our really, really successful musicians that have come up in this area. So on behalf of Late Night with Locks, we actually got a late night behind us, the Tuesday poolside edition. Thank you guys for all of your time, and I look forward to seeing you guys Friday on Late Night with Locks, the last episode, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.